Our malicious compliance ruined a department I helped create? Fine, whatever. Now this goes back decades. I'm almost over it. Not really. I joined a company that was set up as a consultancy to a large corporation to repair their relationship with the local community that they were a part of. I was in the IT division. I was part of a team of 5 people who installed computers in local businesses and ran a billing package for these businesses. We trained their staff and supported everything. This was all done as a low-cost outreach and was very successful. This went fine for about 8 years until the top guy in the company left to join the corporation and a new guy took his place as director. The new guy, who wasn't really a problem, was more of a paper manager, a genius at it really, but he left all personnel issues to the department managers. However, he didn't go along with the IT manager and she finally resigned after months of tense standoffs over various policy issues. Now, I was the most experienced staffer and I might have had a chance to get her job, but the office grapevine said the director had already secretly selected someone himself. This was surprising as we'd merged with a large corporation and all hiring was required to go through human resources. But he wanted to be able to replace our manager instantly, so he'd be grooming the replacement so the moment she resigned, in a fit of anger during a meeting, he had replaced her right away. Remember how I said the director wasn't good at personnel? He wasn't good at hiring and interviewing either. The new IT manager was horrifically unqualified. Her resume was invented from top to bottom. She had no management experience, and as we discovered, she knew nothing about IT. How much of nothing? She didn't understand the difference between Macs and PCs. She made a major purchase of new office software for the entire office, Mac Office software, reran MS-DOS and PCs at the same time. Although Windows 95 had come out a few years earlier, we were locked into IBM PCs with DOS-based applications on a contract with IBM. Her resume boasted a deep programming background, but she didn't know what a subroutine was. It simply just got worse and worse. Over the next few years, she deliberately drove out all experienced staff. She would require highly granular timekeeping for all of IT, tracking who called in for support and when we sent support at a business or the corporation, even though there was zero use for this as there wasn't even internal tracking for who used what. When we complied, including tracking the time to track the time, and her increasingly complex needs for details started to take up an hour each day, the director ended it. She also routinely took personal credit for projects done by her department with no acknowledgement of the actual individual who performed the actual work. One by one, my coworkers left for other jobs, and in one case, she framed one guy for failure she caused and got permission to fire him. She replaced everyone with people she had known at previous jobs, regardless of their backgrounds and job skills. A COBOL programmer replaced one of our training and support people. He was a great guy and miserable in the role she put him in. She hired another woman to replace another staff member, but all this woman had done before was author training manuals. Our training manuals were all provided under our contract. I never figured out what she did aside from acting occasionally as a personal secretary, which made no sense since we had a secretarial pool and she got paid 3 times what they got paid. As for me, my wife and I had our first child around this time and I simply just didn't care about issues of pride anymore. I was careful because all I wanted to do was bring home a paycheck for my family. The IT manager took credit for everything I did. I was careful to document my work and in many cases, her taking credit failed because it was too obvious she wasn't involved. She moved on, trying to get me fired. Anyone who has done customer computer support knows that you will get customers you just cannot make happy. Usually just a personality conflict, and in the past, we simply traded the call off to another member of IT staff, and that would often do the trick. My manager tried to inflate all of these into fireable offenses. To my face, she promised to have my back, as the original IT manager always did. She loved her staff and would take a bullet for us. But behind the scenes, she tried to build a case against me. The first time I realized this was a meeting between the director, one of our business consultants, my manager, and myself. I'd been given a heads up by the business consultant, and when I walked into the meeting, I had all my notes on my supposed failures. She made her pitch to the director, but the business consultant and I destroyed her and demonstrated to the director she was just inventing things. She was humiliated, and I remained unscathed. The second time, an assistant manager at one of the businesses I'd recently installed a computer system raised a huge stink. He'd been following me around during the installation and questioned me. Turns out he was trying to set up a system at home to call into his office to get onto the network, which, back then, was a bigger deal than it is today. However, I'd actually done this for another business, but not this one. He'd made some random guesses as to what he needed and wasted $5,000 because it was all IBM hardware and software. He blamed me. Again, the IT manager told me she'd reviewed my notes and knew I was blameless. I wasn't stupid enough to believe her again. I got the business consultant to go to the head manager at this business and ask about this. It turned out the assistant manager there had never requested remote access internally, and the entire staff there supported my version of events. Of course, my manager once again tried to escalate this to a major failure. Remember those detailed notes and timekeeping she had wanted? Well, even though the ridiculous depth of them was gone, I still kept them. She called another meeting, this time inviting senior management from the corporation as well. It was another embarrassing moment for her. I refuted all the claims made by her and the assistant manager of the business with documentation. My good friend, our business consultant, backed it all up, and the cherry on top, the head manager of the business called the senior management at our corporation to apologize to his assistant manager and to praise my work. My manager looked like the idiot she was, all because I continued to comply with the task and timekeeping she originally instituted to drive the old staff out. Now, she kept her job mainly because our director would have to explain why he had hired someone so clearly unqualified, and he couldn't do that because he violated HR policy to do so. But I know you readers out there want to hear some juicy revenge as well. So that weekend, following that meeting, a major business's entire computer network I'd installed went down after a lightning strike. I remotely diagnosed it and knew it needed a simple hard drive replacement and a restore from a tape backup. I came Monday, and before I could leave to fix the client, she called me into her office. She offered me a 3-month severance package, full pay, benefits, etc. They only offered these to management types normally. She hated me and wanted me gone. I told her I would gladly accept it, but didn't she want this client fixed first? It was kind of a big deal. She said no. While I signed the legal paperwork, she rambled idiotically about my job performance, etc. But I just finished signing, took my copy of the papers, and told her that she didn't know anything about what she was talking about, and this severance proved that. I packed up my office and said goodbye to my friends, many of whom were shocked and crying over this, and I can't deny I was a little wet around the eyes too. I told them it wasn't a problem. And you know what? It wasn't a problem. I had been building my own software company on the nights and weekends for years with the full permission of my original manager. I walked out of there with 3 months of free salary into my own company, which was now paying me more than my old salary now, that I could go full-time with my partners. Oh, and my friend who got fired? I used my contacts and found him a job, a better job too. As for my manager, it took over 2 months to figure out how to replace and restore that hard drive to the business that had the lightning strike. I wasn't kidding about her hiring the wrong people for our jobs too. That business likely badmouthed them because they barely retained 25 to 30% of the businesses as they lost them one by one over the next few years. My friends kept me up to date until they too left.